Hey, songwriters, I'm excited to show you this super cool, easy technique for coming up with interesting, different sounding chord progressions that can sound complex and weird and advanced, and can even be explained with some advanced theory, but we don't need to know that stuff. And I love that stuff. I love studying it and talking about it, and I'll talk about it more. But this is a way to just get some sounds that work for you without needing to know why it works. That is really fun and really cool. And there doesn't even always need to be an explanation for something either. Theory is always after the fact. Theory is always after, hey, somebody made a sound that sounded weird, sounded like this. How can we explain it? So we're going to go in for kind of just the sound and a way to get that sound. And like I said, it could come up with some theoretical options that you might stumble upon when studying harmony, but we're just going to do it for the sake of connecting chords in a chord progression. This is really fun because it gets us out of the box of thinking of there are chords that we need to use that work together in certain kinds of ways. I'm definitely guilty of that, of kind of thinking too much about what is supposed to work and then trying to compose with that. This is just like notes that are next to each other. What can we do with them? So let's take two chords to show you the example, and then I'll do a whole chord progression with you. So for example, if we take the chord G and we take the chord C and we say you want to play a progression that's going to go from G to C. Very nice. Love the sound. I love songs that go back and forth between two chords. And I don't mean this at all to say that we want things always to sound weird or complex, but sometimes you do. Sometimes you just want that spicy flavor. And this is just to give you the option to throw that in there. So what we want to do is we're going to look for where there are notes between the two chords that are a whole step apart. Okay. So for example, in G to C, we have the note D, this open D string, this fourth string. And on that string, ba, ba, it's going to go up a whole step to this second fret on the fourth string. That's the third of C. Da, ba. This is kind of like the built-in melodies technique that I talked about in a past video, and I'll put a link right up here for that. It's looking at notes along one string at a time and seeing where they connect, because I call them built-in melodies. Like I just sang that there, you could kind of pull out in the melody. So it's very related to that, but taking it kind of to the next level. Da, ba. This is D of the G chord, this is E of the C chord. Great lyrics. All it is, you find a whole step between two notes, like as if it's a voice that moves, right? As if it's a melody. And then you just connect a half step in between. That's it. That's all it is. So super simple, but we're going to walk through several examples to show how it can really be applied. So yeah, really different sound. And it happens to be a G augmented triad that we end up getting by doing that. But you don't need to have thought, okay, what's a chord that goes well to C or G augmented? It's just explore the sounds, right? So yes, an augmented chord as the 5 of another chord is a great chord to kind of cause some tension and resolve and all of that. But again, we can realize that after the fact. We're just taking a whole step apart. Da, da, da. Okay. If we went back to G, you could go back with that same note. Da, and you get C minor. I'm playing a C minor shape like this. Here's probably the most common way to play C minor, or like this. So many voicings we could use on the guitar, but the point is, find your own way of doing it. And I'll suggest some voicings at different times as well. The voicing thing can feel kind of important because if we're jumping around with shapes, it might not have the, full pull and effect of voice leading, where the individual note, the individual voice is going, exactly that half step at a time and everything. So I love working out specific voice leading, different voicings and shapes on the guitar to be very precise. But even with just the most obvious shape you can find, if we went from D to B minor, we get another augmented chord there. So you'll see, of course, augmented is going to be a common one if you raise the 5 a half step from any of the chords. So this voice leading works out really nicely. So that's it. But I want to walk you through an entire song idea to compose with this, just to show you, if we really saw this through, how it might work. Again, sometimes you might want that flavor, sometimes not. Very often, trying to find options, I can feel that I might be overdoing the chromaticism, the chromatic notes being the out of the key ones, the connecting notes that we're adding in. But again, every so often it might just absolutely hit the spot. So I want you to know of it as an option. So here's the progression I want to play with. I want to play with key of A, and we're going to take the A chord, the E chord, the B minor chord, and the D chord. This is a 1 chord, 5 chord. This is the 2 chord, and this is the 4 chord. This happens to be the same progression as the song Just Like Heaven by The Cure, the one that goes do 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 do. So I wanted to take something, I heard that song today and I was like, okay, just take a normal chord progression, diatonic, being it's all in the key, 1 chord, 5 chord, 2 chord, 4 chord. Great. Now, how can we connect them? So let's just walk through it and do this. There is a whole step between this note that is the 2nd fret of A, 2nd fret, 2nd string on the A chord. It's the 3rd of the chord. And then that same string is going to have an open string for the E. So we have a connecting spot that we can use. Cool, very moody, very moody. This is like some modal mixture stuff. It could be explained with modal mixture. The Beatles use that kind of sound a lot, that chromaticism. Radiohead uses that kind of sound a lot, that chromaticism. So cool, we have one connecting. I'm gonna connect all the chords. Again, this might be overdoing it. I wanna do every single option though. So we got A, it happens to be A minor next, and then E, and then E is gonna go to B minor. So again, I'm gonna go ahead and make the E minor, because if we have that open G, it's gonna go a half step down to one of the notes on B minor. I'm kind of walking through this fast because you already have enough to experiment with it on your own. I just want to have you hear the sound and how I might walk through it. So A minor, then E minor, then B minor, and then we're gonna go to D. So this note here, this 4th fret on the 3rd string, is the root of B minor. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring that down. Ooh, great, we get a different kind of chord now, because we had minor chords, we had augmented chords with our examples so far. Again, you don't even have to know what they are. I just want you to be like, ooh, that's what I want. But this happens to be a minor major 7 chord, so it's a minor triad with a major 7, and it's just perfect for passing through. So it's and then landing on the D chord. That minor major 7 passing thing is just its own progression altogether that's very, very common. It's like what Stairway to Heaven does. So that's its own kind of common progression. When it's moving through is when that's most often used. From D back to A, this 2nd fret on the top string is there. I'm going to move it down a half step, make a D minor. So we get a lot of these minor chords, that's okay. But you can hear it creating the tension, creating the pull. Cool. So here's our whole progression just with these standard chord shapes. Starts over. Okay, so once we have that, now we want to look at, okay, cool, that and it might be a bit busy, fine, I'm going to stick with it though and see, can we compose something effective? Can we write a song with this and have it be really unique and stand out? And I certainly don't believe music has to be unique or stand out. I think it just has to be honest and be connected to what we're trying to express, to be effective and to feel like the right thing. But if it feels like the right thing and it's honest and effective, it doesn't hurt that it's can be unique and stand out as well. So I think we can agree that this progression is much less common than the other one where I was just using the standard chords. And, if I was really being discerning about this, I might use a couple of those and not all of them. But let's go ahead and compose with this. So the basic thing I wanted you to understand is just straight up that chord progression thing, just the connecting, find the whole step voice leading, and then connect it by half step. So you have that now. So I'm not gonna worry too much about explaining, showing diagrams or anything for this melody writing. I'm just gonna kind of walk through it so you can say, what would it look like? I want to share with you, what would it look like if I wanted to sit here and play with it some more. So sometimes I'll want to target the note that's actually moving, but a lot of times not, because I feel like that is contrived sounding sometimes, like always targeting that note that changes. I want to target it maybe sometimes, and we have to just go with our intuition here, just be creative. But what I'm thinking here is if I use this melody, the 5, this is the 5 of A, it gets to kind of stay constant while the chords move around it. So okay, so I might move it, I might kind of make it a little more dynamic. So ba, ba, da, 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 da. And then ba, 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 da, da, ba, ba. So I wanted to move da, da, da. I went up to the 3rd of E. Da, ba, ba, ba. There I targeted the actual voice change. So I went na, da, na, 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 now major 3rd of E, bum, bum, minor 3rd of E. So I'm feeling good about that. Dun, 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 ba, 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 da, ba. Okay, dun, dun, dun. Okay, well, I'm going to B minor. So I want to go to this note here. Dun, 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 ba, ba, da, 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 da. Those 3 notes are in there. And I know that, if you don't think this way on the guitar, that's why I said kind of disclaimer that I'm just walking through it really quickly. I want to share this with you though, because this is how I think of whether I'm singing it, thinking it in my mind, hearing it, playing it, when I'm composing, if I'm maybe writing backup parts or string parts, I'm thinking on the fretboard how it all connects. As a guitar player, it makes me a stronger guitar player, even if I'm thinking of something to play on the keyboard and I write it on the fretboard, and I'll do that sometimes for sure. So da, da, ba, da, da, da. I'm aware of every single note in the melody writing, where it lines up with the chord and why, and why it's sounding like it fits with it. Da, 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 da. Cool. Well, that inner motion is going to happen now, and da 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 da. Those 3 notes. Da 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 da. So I really like choosing these melody areas that don't have to change with the harmony changing. So the harmony is kind of moving under it. And again, the Beatles do this a lot. A song that comes to mind is Julia, where there's just a constant melody and kind of harmony moving under it. So it's a way to make it very kind of colorful without needing to follow this. If you added backup vocals in though, this moving stuff is prime for that. Ooh, ooh, oops. Ooh. While there's maybe lyrics going on the other melody. So, okay, let's continue on. Okay, so far we have no, 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 da, da, ba, 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 da, da, da. Okay, da, da, I want to come back down. Da, da, da. This note I'm singing right now is the root of D, so da, it's a great spot to just stay. Da, 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 and I can just da, 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 stay there. When I go to that D minor, da, 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 da. All right, this is very cool. Da, da, that if the progression wraps back around, da 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 da. Oh, I almost went da 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 da, because I was thinking that at the beginning anyway. So da da. So now it loops back around on itself really well. Cool. We have a melody for the whole thing. It's gonna go da da da. Let's see. Da 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 ba 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 da 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 ba 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 da-da, da-da. So maybe a little busy? Yeah, maybe. If I spent more time on it, I could maybe... I'm feeling right now like, maybe I'd make that a little more sparse. But I like it. And, the harmony is busy, and then the melody is really taking up a lot of space too. But that's okay. We're going to see if we can just roll with it and keep going. All right, I'm gonna write some lyrics to it to have it feel like a real song, and then also work out what exact voicings, what exact chord shapes do I wanna play for that progression. Okay, I'm back. So I wrote lyrics and I worked out the exact voicings that I want to use on the guitar. And I also ended up writing a chorus, or maybe it's a bridge. It's just a separate section to go away from that one idea and then come back, a different chord progression with a different melody. So I'll walk through all of that stuff just so you can hear kind of how it is coming out. I like to practice songwriting in the same way that I would practice anything, right? Like, okay, you just have to practice it, right? So I'm treating this a little bit like if I had to keep going with this idea, if I had to work with this progression, if I had a song due in an hour, like, let's write something, right? It doesn't have to be my opus or whatever, but I can exercise the ability to get into that creative space of at least having fun with it and having choices that feel somewhat expressive and honest again. So cool. So I'll just go ahead and play it for you and then talk about whatever else. The lyrics turned out to be about being paranoid about being a clone. So, which I am paranoid about that. I think about it all the time. In fact, I think I'm going to change my channel to mainly just talk about that. Okay, here we go. I get up in the morning and I'm trying to get going, but there's something that's deep in my bones that won't leave me alone. So I try to address it while I'm getting dressed, but there's nothing I own that can cover up this feeling of being a clone. That's right, you heard me right, so I drive out of town, I got the music loud. By now you know that I'm not messing around, I'm looking to find how I can clear my mind. I gotta do it before I run out of time, oh yeah, oh yeah. Of course, there needs to be a synthesizer in that song, right? Okay, so lyrics really bring it to life, and I'll often just use super placeholder lyrics just to, or mumbly stuff, and I know a lot of people do that just to get it to feel human and like it's emotional and thoughts are being processed. Notice the melody changes when you do that. It feels really too precise when I write it on the guitar and the fretboard, and that's really my way of doing it, thinking very much on the fretboard, and then I'll try to scale it back to be as organic as I can, fitting with the words, changing some of the rhythms and stuff like that, just based on how it feels that I can sing it. Sometimes I'll change it because I just can't sing it comfortably. My brain is just not hearing it in the way I want to, even though I wrote it in this kind of way that I know works on the fretboard or for an instrument. So let's talk about what I'm doing with the voicings for a second. So I decided to use, all 3-note triad shapes, but with a lot of inversions. So this is an A chord. I have the low E, that's the 5 of the chord, and then the root and the 3rd. I have string 6, string 3, and string 2. That's an A chord. And then this is an A chord where it's the root, the 3rd, and the 5th. Open, root, 3rd, 5th. So I'm going, and I got this rhythm going. This is my A minor. this is E major with the third in the bass, and then that third moves down to the minor. So I like that a lot. Do, do. It's like a moving bass line. Do. So I'm using these inversions and these finger picking 3-note triads. And then I move down to this is B minor with the 5 in the bass, and then that moving note in there. And then this is D major with the 3 in the bass, so D over F sharp. And then that moves down. So you get this really cool moving bass line stuff. And then I'm back where I started, so it loops really nicely. I'll just play just that. Okay, as for the bridge or the chorus, I don't know what, it would be exactly at. Kind of a chorus, I guess, super catchy. I feel like that melody is probably straight up from another song. It came way too easily, so it has to be from something else that I was hearing. At least part of that melody. If you know what it is, put it in the comments, please. I modulated, and that's the interesting thing that I did here, and also wanted to use zero of that chromaticism, right? Just like super catchy and poppy without that connectivity stuff for the contrast, right? It'd be too much. I mean, we can do whatever we want, right? Sometimes we want, if you want it all the time, you want it all the time. But I really wanted something just really fresh. So I have a G major chord here. What I did is when I landed on that D, instead of going to D minor, I went to D7. And that was that funny part. We go, I can't remember what I said even. That's right, you heard me right. So I did a D7 and a D7. These are both D7 over F sharp. D7, D7. This is a great example of voice leading right here, where I have that moving there and this moving into, they're both moving into the G chord. Right, like ultimate resolution, contrary motion. So I just went D7 into G, and then I'm just in that key. So I went G, and then this is D over F sharp, and then I went to A. A over E. So basically it's this. So I'm sorry, I didn't modulate to G. I modulated went to the chord G, but it's officially the key of D because I'm going on the 4 chord and then A. So if we want to think of it that way, this is an A chord, and then this is a G chord, and then G again, and then D again, and then A again, and then, so same thing twice in a row. Here's what it would look like, just normal. With these chord shapes. Okay, so I really like choosing very specifically what those notes are, especially 3 notes. That's just me. That's just, I'm using the finger style and everything. I like to strum sometimes, but not as often. I feel I'm kind of trying to orchestrate here. Like I'm really thinking of each note as a singer and where their notes move. So this turnaround thing is really fun because we're talking about modulating. So we have to get back to A now, the key of A. So I went to D, in the key. So, oops, sorry. Oh yeah. And again, just so you know, I'm always aware of where those melody notes are. If for nothing else, a fretboard kind of compositional guitar knowledge exercise. Any song you're learning, where's that melody in the chord? Why does it work? Do you see it in the chord on the fretboard? And especially if we're composing chord progressions and interested in improvising, especially improvising, we basically have to do this, right? If I improvise over a D minor chord, I have to really be seeing, ideally, da, minor third, da, da, what is what over every chord all the time. So that helps quite a bit as well. To modulate really smoothly if you want to go to another key. D major, we were in the key of A, so D major and B minor are both what are called pivot chords. That means they're in both keys. We were in the key of A before, and we modulated for that chorus part to D major. So in both those keys, you have the chord D and you have the chord B minor. So I used those to play both of those in a row and then went to E. sus and then went to E major, and E major is not in the key of D, so it's the thing that finally signals, okay, we're actually modulating back. But it sounds smooth because you set those pivot chords before it. So more on that in other lessons for sure, but just kind of walking through what I did here. So that's it, kind of a haphazard lesson on songwriting. That one tip is what I wanted to show you, but I got carried away with wanting to write with it and finish with it and kind of explain everything else that I was doing to some degree and just share with you the process. So there's no wrong way to do it, of course, at all. It's just with tools like this, and it's why I love songwriting so much. The tools and the knowledge and the theory and the techniques and the exposure and all that stuff is just to get us going. It's just to feel like we're not running out of juice, running out of energy, running out of inspiration. So there's no wrong way to do it. It's just cool to have a couple tangible academic concepts to play with, and still, of course, our emotions, our intuition are the thing that guide us in the end. You still have to feel it. Well, you don't have to feel it, but I think the goal and the most satisfaction comes from hitting that option that you decide to go with in the song, and you feel like, yes, that is the right thing. So for me personally, no harm in having a bunch of academic theory options to play with, and make sure that intuition is honed enough to know when it hits you emotionally, and then you grab it and go with that. So I love the combination of those two worlds, the raw creativity, and then the ultra overly intellectualized theory stuff, and just kind of mixing between them all the time till you get something that you're happy with. So let me know if you like the songwriting stuff, and I will definitely do more of it in the future. The creativity stuff, the combining theory with how we actually use it to write and be creative and maybe extract things from other songs that we like. Make sure you subscribe. You don't want to miss next week's lesson. It's going to be really cool. So I look forward to seeing you then, and happy practicing and happy songwriting. So I drive out of town and got the music loud. That's right, you heard me right. So I drive out of town, I have the windows